All right, so you know how you've heard those traders talking about certain news that's coming out, this high impact news, this news, blah, 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 whatever. And you're probably wondering to yourself, where the heck are they getting all of this information from? Well, there's a little website and it is called forexfactory.com. So I'll drag it over here so we guys can see it. This is what it'll be looking like. Let me just get rid of this, make it look a little bit cleaner. So forexfactory.com, quite simple enough. Type that in and click on the first link. I believe it's the first link. It should be the first link. Now you're going to be greeted with a page that looks exactly like this. It does look a little bit confusing. There is a lot of stuff going on, but the only thing that we want to worry about is what's going on in here. These are what's called the news folders. This is the news that is being released throughout any certain day. So I'll quickly run through what we need to understand in terms of Forex Factory. So up here we have the date. Now it'll be showing whatever day that you're looking at. It automatically goes to that day. You are able to, say for instance, set this for an entire week by clicking wherever you want to start to wherever you want to finish. Click apply settings, and then once it loads, I don't know why it's taking so long for me today. Here we go. You will be greeted with a bunch more news folders. So obviously we can see on the left here, this is all the news that was coming out on Monday, February 3rd, Tuesday, February 4th, Wednesday, February 5th. You get the idea, right? So a lot of news is constantly coming out. I'm just going to change this back to today's one just to make it easier to understand and talk about. So every single day there will be a lot of news coming out all around the world. Different, currencies will be affected based on the certain news that's coming out. Do we care about every single news event that is happening across the world? Absolutely not. That is way too much to worry about. We don't need to care about that. So what you want to do is up here where it says filter, just at the top right of those folders, click on filter. And by doing so, basically in this bit, you're going to see that we have currencies. All of these currencies will be ticked. These are, of course, all of the currencies that you can trade and that will be shown on Forex Factory in terms of news releases. Are we trading every single currency within this box? No. So what are we going to do? We're just going to uncheck the currencies that we're not using, the ones that we don't care about. So for me, it's going to be that. I leave Euro news on because I trade GBP, USD. Sometimes the Euro can affect it, so I just like to leave the Euro on there as well. But those will be my currency pairs that I want to see the news for. So you can, of course, add in whatever currency pairs it is that you are looking to trade and then add those into there. So make sure those are ticked, and then you can click apply filter. Once that applies it, it'll get rid of all of the other currencies like the Swiss, the CAD, the Oz dollar, all of that, depending on what you unticked, of course. It'll get rid of all of that, cleaning up the news, making it look a little bit nicer. So another thing that we need to talk about is the impact. As you can see here, it says impact. We have red folder, yellow folder. There's no example here, but there is sometimes also an orange folder. If we go back to our little filter section, which might be this little green looking thing at the moment now, click on this and you can see expected impact. So the difference between all of these four folders is how impactful that news, that certain type of news is expected to be once it is released onto the market. So we have the red folder news. This is our super high impact news. Some news that is red folder should be avoided. It is very unpredictable, very high volatility, and very high impact. So red folder, super high impact, the top of the list. Then we have the orange folder, which is about a medium impact. It can have a stronger effect on the market. It's not going to be anywhere near as strong as the red folder news will be, but again, we can see visible changes within the market. And then we have the yellow impact news. Now, the yellow folders are basically just very, very minor news releases that are coming out. They do not need to be worried about too much at all. So for me personally, I just untick the yellow folders because there is no yellow folder news that for me personally I'm going to be seeing that is getting released and avoiding. So any yellow folder news I'll be able to trade through. Orange folder I should also be able to trade through, but it's nice to know when something could be coming out. And then the red folder news as well. I definitely want to be alert and aware of what sort of red folder news is coming out. Now, we do also have a gray folder over here, and the gray folder is not a high impact news. It is the bank holiday. So anytime you see a gray folder with a certain currency pair next to it, that means that that currency in that country, it is a bank holiday for them. So you'll see a gray folder, says USD bank holiday. That means for the US, say for instance, the 4th of July, that's a bank holiday. None of the banks will be trading on that day. So it is not going to be high volatile wicks and high impact when that news comes out. Because it is bank holiday, we're actually going to get we're going to expect lower volume because not a lot of the big traders like the banks and institutions will be trading on days like this. So leave those ones on. You can turn off the yellow. The rest, orange, you don't need to worry about too much, but the gray is a bank holiday and the red is super high impact news that we want to be aware of. So by clicking apply filter here, you can see that makes my Wednesday look a lot neater. I don't need to be reading through a bunch of different news articles. There is only 2 things that can come out on this day. Now at the same time, you will see that these are the times of the news release over here on the left. That will be probably saying something different to you unless you live where I live. But just at the top here, you can see there's a little clock. Click on that, it'll be set to your local time zone. You can change this to any time zone you want. So let's say that you're trading in the Eastern time, US and Canada. Click that, click save settings, and then you'll take note of these being released at 2 a.m. and 9:10 a.m. They will definitely be changing to, as you can see, 10 a.m. and now 5:10 p.m. So obviously if you're looking to trade different time sessions, then switching it to that local time could help you adjust a little bit better. But I personally just like to leave it on my local one wherever I'm based, just because then I know what time the news is going to be released based on my time. Now it's all well and good understanding when the news is coming out, but how do we actually read what the news is going to do? So let's take, for example, a news release that is coming up down here on, it says for me Saturday, but of course that'll be Friday night because, time zones and shit. We have NFP, non-farm employment change. This is a super high impact news, as we can tell by the red folder. And if we click this little yellow folder, you can see at the top here, it says detail. This will give us a little bit of information about that news that is being released. So open that up and you can see all of this information down the left and some history as well. The history we'll start off with because it's a lot easier. You can see the last dates that this certain news was released. You can also see how it released and all of that stuff. We'll explain this in a little second. But by clicking on one of these, it'll take you back to that day. And yeah, you can basically read about the news if you want to. And it just shows other impacts that it may have had on the market. So all that we care about really over here is the usual effect, where it says here, the usual effect. This says for NFP, for example, the actual greater than forecast is good for the currency. So what does this actually mean? Well, as I said before, if we take a look on the right, we can see that we have a forecast and a previous as well as an actual. So for this example, we'll just take a look at January 11, my birthday actually. This is the last time that this sort of news was released for this year. And as we can see, we have an actual, forecast, and previous. So back up here, you can see there's an actual. Before the news is released, obviously this number will be blank because we don't actually know what the release is yet. It hasn't come out. There is, of course, a forecast. This is what the prediction is for the number that they're expecting based on whatever the heck, if you want to get really deep into it. But based on the number that they're expecting to see, that is going to be the forecast. So for this example, the forecast for NFP coming out this week is 169,000. Then we have the previous, which was of course the last release, which is 256,000. And as you can see by opening up the yellow folder, January 11 was our last release, and the actual release was 256,000, which is why we can see that is the previous. Now, back over here, it says if the actual is greater than the forecast, then it's good for the currency. So what can we expect when it is saying that? So if the forecast, for example here on January 11, the forecast was 164,000. The actual came out at 256,000. Obviously, the actual being 256,000 is greater than the forecast being 164,000, which means it's good for currency. So what does that mean? US dollar is going to be getting stronger based on that type of news release. As you can see, obviously it's green, makes it a little bit easier. That means it's bullish only for the US dollar though. So if you're reading a pair like GBP USD, we have to understand what the impact of this news will be on a pair like GBP USD. Because the US dollar will be getting stronger, in terms of GU, the market will actually drop down. Now, why is this? It's because of how we have to read our pairs. So with the pound being first, every time it goes up, the pound is getting stronger. Every time it goes down, the pound is getting weaker. So whatever is on the other side of that, the US dollar, every time this chart goes up, the US dollar is actually getting weaker. Every time the chart goes down, the US dollar is actually getting stronger. Let me just jump onto the charts real quick. I'll write it up, make it seem a little bit easier to understand. So if we have a news release, let's say for our GBP / USD, okay, we have a release. If it is US news, for example, let's start with GBP news actually. So GBP news, that is, why am I there? Good for currency means that price goes up for this example. And then if it was to release bad for currency, then the price will go down. All right. So as we can see, GBP news release is like so. And then similarly, we have the USD news release, which is basically the opposite. So whichever currency is first within the pair, that news release will directly correlate with the chart. It'll be easy. If it's good, it goes up. If it's bad, it goes down. Whichever currency is second within the pair, you basically just flip it. So if it's good, it goes down. If it's bad, it goes up. So a good for currency equals price goes down. And let's stretch this out. And a bad for currency equals price goes up. So we have to understand our pairs that we're looking at and relate them with the news as well. So this is how we correlate the news with the pair. Similarly though, we can have another example. It is not just GBP USD being like that. So let's say we had another pair like the USD JPY. For this one, we would of course have USD news release. And if this one was good for currency, it would equal price going up and if it was bad for currency, then it would equal price going down. Okay, and then the JPY news releases, leave it at that for now. Good for currency, price goes down. Bad for currency, price goes up. There's a couple of examples. So just understanding the pair that we are trading and the news that is releasing, we can understand where the market is going to be affected. So for good news release on USD, if the currency is second within the pair, a good news release is going to go down, and then a good news release if the currency is the first in the pair, price will go up. So it's just understanding whichever currency is first within the pair, that is going to be a direct correlation to the market, and then whichever currency is second is just going to be flipped on its head. It's a little bit confusing, but at the same time, it does make sense. So that is of course important. Now, when news is releasing, it is super volatile, it is super unpredictable as well, unless you have inside information. You don't know what the news release is going to be. By the time you actually get this number pop up, the actual, it gives you a little countdown and then loads for a sec and then it actually releases. By the time that number pops up, the charts can already either be shot in that direction or wicking about like crazy. So for the high impact news days, you kind of want to avoid most of them. Unless you are trading the day, trade after the release. Don't try and trade before the release. I know that if you buy in here and the news release is positive in terms of the direction of your market and it shoots up, you can make $1 million in one day. It doesn't matter. That shit is not going to happen every day. That shit's like barely ever going to happen even. I feel like every time I'm in the market when there is a high news release, I get stopped out. Every time, even if it stops me out and then runs to my take profit, it's going to stop you out because when these news releases happen, there's so much volatility. It is crazy. And and it can literally wick out both buyers and sellers all at the same time. So it's a ridiculous thing to be doing, trying to trade stuff like this, and I would recommend avoiding it. But not avoiding every single one. Some of them are not as strong as the others. And as well, USD news is going to be so much more impactful than some other news. But of course, it depends on what sort of pair you are trading. So if you're trading the AUSJPY, for example, and there's US news, you don't really have to be worrying about it, mainly because you should be trading that in a session time that correlates, being Tokyo session. And then you're not going to have news release until a very long time for the USD. But you will have to pay attention, of course, to some JPY news and some Aus dollar news, as well as potential bank holidays. So in terms of the USD though, or in terms of anything though, CPI, PPI, FOMC, and NFP are super high impact. Unemployment claims, and I think it's employment rate, I find is also pretty high impactful, at least on Aussie dollar and stuff like that. I've found that the GBP news is not too bad. Plus, it doesn't really come out at the time of trading. It normally comes out like an hour before the market opens. At least for now, that's what I've found. But definitely pay attention to when there is high impact news releasing. And if you don't want to be trading it, don't want to be risking it, which would be a smart thing to do, take note of what it does after it releases. And as well, the forecast is barely ever what the actual is. If it does happen to be that the actual release is the same as the forecast, price normally wicks around a lot and then basically sits back in the middle where it was, because that was expected, that price was expected to come out. But that doesn't happen a lot of times, and even when it does, it can still wick about a lot, chop around and stuff like that. As well though, the news release doesn't determine the direction of the market for the entire day. So you can have a news release that shoots the market all the way up here. Throughout the rest of the day, it trades all the way back down and then ends up like going back to where it was before it started, moving lower even, stuff like that. The news release doesn't always affect the daily bias for the day. Now, I think that's pretty much it in terms of news and reading news data. So hopefully this did make sense to you. Be sure to note down some high impact news that you could be facing when it comes to trading. I feel like my camera's been a bit laggy today, but hopefully not. Hopefully that's fine. Anyways, we will go on to the next lesson once you are ready to do so. There's not really a homework that I need to be giving you for today. So yeah, just take note of some news, and you know what you can do? You can go back on the charts, use the previous tool after clicking onto here, see your history, go back on that day to the charts and see how it impacts it. Like go all the way down onto the 1 minute chart as well. See how much volume there is on a 1 minute candle when a super high impact news releases compared to the other candles around it. So 1 minute candles all might be looking like this size, and then you get the news release and it's like huge. Anyway, do that for a bit of homework, and I'll see you in the next lesson.